What's up guys, Coach Thomas here, and today we're going to be talking about the squat and why it's important and why we integrate it into our workouts. So before we start with that, we kind of need to define what a squat is. So a squat is basically where we're bending at our hips, our knees, and our ankles and trying to keep our torso as upright as possible at the same time, getting maximal depth and then standing up tall. So the way I do it with just body weight, I'm gonna reach my arms out for balance. I'm gonna bend at my knees and my hips at the same time, sink my butt down as low as I'm able to, try and get my hamstring to rest on top of my calf at the bottom, and then stand up tall. What you'll notice is at the bottom, I'm not trying to round everything, look like a dog taking a poop. Instead, I'm staying up nice and tall and pushing up through my legs, okay? So this is very much a lower body exercise. We're trying to maximize how much force we can put into the ground, and that will carry over ideally into sport. So the reason we do it full range of motion and all the way down is to keep our joints as healthy as possible, right? If we don't use it, we lose it. So we need to make sure we're moving through full ranges of motion on every single rep and make sure we're getting the maximal stretch out of the muscle and also the maximal stretch out of the joint. So what you'll notice next to me is some heel ramps. And we use heel ramps when we squat primarily so we can focus on getting maximal depth on every single rep. Not everyone has very mobile ankles and sometimes can be really stiff in the front, so they aren't able to really drive their knees forward as they sit into that squat. And usually what ends up happening is they'll lean forward a lot, send their butt back, and just do like what I call a good morning squat, or like bending forward at the hips, right? And that's not really what we're looking for. We're trying to stay as upright as possible. So we use the heel elevation to kind of take the ankles out of the equation and help with that. In the sport of weightlifting, they actually wear special shoes for this purpose. Shoes like this have a raised heel, and basically that helps you sit into deeper ranges of motion. Now, Olympic weightlifters have great ankle mobility a majority of the time, but they still wear these shoes. So even if you have great ankle mobility, these shoes can help you get a better performance out of your squat, okay? So if you don't have shoes like this, I wouldn't expect you to. They're like $200 most of the time, very expensive shoes and only can use for weightlifting. So wouldn't recommend them if you're not a weightlifter, but we can use heel ramps instead. And basically how we do that, we can take our same squat setup, put our heels on the ramp, our toes go on the ground, and now we can do that same squat. And you'll notice as I go down, I can sit much more upright at the bottom than if I had without it. And I have pretty good ankle mobility most of the time, but the ramps actually help me out quite a bit. So that's why we use those ramps. So the first exercise we use in our squat progression is actually just going to be a body weight squat. So no weight at all. Pretty much we're just going to set up on these heel ramps, put our heels on there, toes on the floor, just like I mentioned before. And then all I'm going to do is try and stay as upright as possible, send my butt down, and then stand up nice and tall, okay? Now, normally when we're first learning this, I like to think using a tempo. So tempo just means how fast or how slow you're going, right? So I'll usually use a 4-second tempo on the way down, count to 4 on the way down. I'll actually pause for a moment in the bottom and then I'll stand up, okay? So 4, 3, 2, 1, hold in the bottom, stand up aggressively, okay? And that just helps you learn the positioning so you can find and feel like where you're at in space. And you can start to understand, okay, I might lean a little bit too far forward, or maybe I'm like falling backwards or something like that, right? So the air squat or the body weight squat is something that's really useful just to kind of figure out how to develop the movement, and then we use that tempo to help us out, okay? If you find when you squat, even with the heel ramps, you start to lose your balance and you're falling backwards like this, right? What we can do is use a counterbalance. So that's kind of what this 10-pound plate is for. This is called the plate press out squat. It's the same exact idea, but this plate will actually act as a counterbalance and keep us from falling backwards. So same thing, 4-second tempo, 1-second pause, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm looking through the hole at the bottom. And then when I stand, I pull it back into my chest. So as I go down, I'm just pressing that plate out. It's gonna keep me upright, and then I can stand up, okay? So that's the body weight squat and the plate press out squat, our first exercise in our squat progression. So now once we've become proficient in developing a full range of motion body weight squat, and we can get all the way down to the bottom, now we can start to load it up, okay? And the first way I like to load it up is actually holding a weight out in front of us, similar to the plate press out squat, but now instead of pressing it out, we're keeping it nice and close to our chest. okay? And that's basically gonna keep that weight as close as we can to our center of mass and let us lift the most load possible, right? At least for this exercise. So this one's called a goblet squat. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab a dumbbell, okay? And then basically, if your dumbbell's starting on the floor, right, we need to pick it up and we need to get it up into the goblet position. So all I'm gonna do is grab this top head of the dumbbell by just hooking my fingers underneath. And then from there, I'm gonna set my butt down, my chest up, and I'm actually going to use my legs to jump the weight up. And I'm just gonna spin my hands around, and then that head of the dumbbell is gonna sit right there in my palms. So this is called a goblet clean. So I'm just gonna go ahead and clean this weight up, boom, shift my hands around, and now I'm in this perfect goblet position. Okay, then I can go ahead and step back onto my heel ramps, make sure my feet are set in the right position, okay? The dumbbell's nice and close to my chest, as close as I'm able to, and then from there, I'm doing the same exact squatting motion. Nothing else changes except my arms are now nice and close to my body. So sit my butt down and back, hold at the bottom, stand up nice and tall. Do another rep for you, and up, okay? So that is the goblet squat, and we can start to load this up while we're still learning the movement. And then once we're proficient at that, we can move on to more advanced variations. So now that we've learned our progression exercises, our bodyweight squat, our plate press out squat, and our goblet squat, now it's time to move into heavier loaded exercises, and that we use a barbell for, okay? So when we start to barbell squat or really do anything with the barbell out of a rack, we really need to be concerned with safety, right? Things can go wrong on these exercises, and you always want to be as safe as you possibly can. So with these racks, these are very sturdy. This is 3x3 inch tube steel. It's not going to go anywhere. It's bolted into the ground. It's very, very heavy duty, right? So with that in mind, it's designed to keep you safe as much as possible, right? And what you'll notice here is that there are some safety bars up, okay? Anytime you're doing a squatting exercise off of a rack, always have the safety spotter arms up. And the reason we do that is just in case you can't get out of the squat for any reason, these are there to save you from the bar crushing you into the ground. So if I fail a squat here and I can't get up out of the bottom, I can just come down to the bottom, let the bar sit on the pins, and I can just walk out of it, right? If you didn't have those things there, basically you're stuck at the bottom and you got to try and ditch the bar off your back in some weird, awkward way, and hopefully it doesn't scrape your back on the way down. Or even worse, maybe you have a back spasm in the middle of your lift and you end up on the floor with the barbell on top of you, which is not what we want at all. So safety first, always make sure everything is set to the right height for you, okay? So I always have my J-hooks here, the things holding the bar, set to the right height for me, okay? Make sure it's wherever it's just underneath your full standing height, right? So as soon as I unrack the bar, I can just stand straight up and it's only a couple inches, right? The safety spotter arms should be no more than 4 inches underneath your shoulders or underneath where the barbell is at the bottom of your squat. So these might even be a little bit too low for me. I'd probably want to raise them up just a little bit. So each person's going to be different. Make sure when you're squatting with the barbell that everything is set up to your dimensions that's going to be safe for you. Now that we've talked about safety with squatting with the barbell out of a rack, now we can move into our exercises and how to perform them correctly, okay? So for this demonstration, I'm going to be facing that way, but when you guys squat, you would be facing the rack, okay? I'm just gonna demo this way so you can see everything that's going on, okay? So our first exercise is gonna be a front squat, all right? Most people don't like front squats, mainly because they can be a little bit challenging as far as like upper body mobility. Some people are really tight in the wrists, tight in the shoulders, tight in their lats, where they can't get their elbows up high enough into a good position. So they just struggle with them, okay? It's okay to struggle with them for a little bit. What I like to tell people is, you know, I've broken this wrist twice. I've broken this elbow once, and I've broken this wrist once. So even through all that, after spending, you know, a lot of time under a barbell and really getting good at this, it got better. And I can actually front rack a barbell and front squat with it with a full hook grip at a very high weight, okay? So the more you practice it, the better it's gonna get. Yeah, it's gonna suck. Yeah, it's gonna be uncomfortable, okay? But it's not supposed to be comfortable. This is working out for a reason, right? We are working out. We're not laying down on the ground going, oh, this is really comfortable. Okay, so it's not gonna be comfortable. Don't expect it to be comfortable. It is what it is, okay? So now let's get into our front squat. Before we start telling you how to do it, let me just show you what it actually looks like. So I'm gonna go ahead, take about a thumb's distance grip from the smooth part of the bar right here, okay? I'm gonna wrap my hand around in a full grip on there, okay? And then from there, I'm going to put that barbell right on my collarbones, okay? After that, I can roll my elbows forward, get them as high as I'm able to. Try get your upper arm parallel to the floor. Once you're set in that position, stand up and unrack your bar. From here, now I can do my same squat, but I need to focus on keeping my elbows high so they don't hit my knees at the bottom, okay? So all I do, sit down on my squat, drive those elbows up, sit, and stand, okay? So as you can see, that might be a little bit challenging for some to keep those elbows really, really high, okay? But it actually does get better the more that you do it. So keep practicing it, okay? We'll work on the front rack as much as we possibly can. And then from there, once you feel comfortable with it, you'll actually be able to load this exercise up pretty well, okay? And that's the front squat. Now, for some people who struggle with the front squat, sometimes it's a good idea to actually open up the hands a little bit and just let the bar kind of roll into the fingertips. And usually people who have really tight shoulders need to do that. It's not your wrists, it's usually your shoulders, okay? And the other part of this is it actually might make your wrist pain a little bit worse because you're putting a bigger stretch on the bottom part of your forearm here, okay? So you can use it when you start getting when you're first learning the movement and whatever, but when you're doing your warm-up sets and trying to get ready to go, you wanna make sure you're gripping it with a full grip on the bar, because that's gonna give you the greatest stretch through your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, okay? And that's gonna help you out develop your front squat over time. Yes, we can roll into our fingertips to start and just kind of get used to it, but once we're good with that, we need to start working on the mobility and getting that whole grip on there. Okay, so just to show you guys what a fingertip front squat would look like, basically you're gonna take that same grip width, go ahead and grab your bar. Now when you roll your elbows through, you're actually just gonna let that bar kind of sit on your fingertips and drive those elbows as high as you can, okay? I like to keep at least 3 fingers on the bar, okay, 4 if possible, and then from there, you can just do your same squat, okay? So, as you can see, my wrist is much more bent than if I have a full grip, okay? And that's usually because you're limited in your shoulder range of motion. You can't get those elbows high enough, right? So try to work on the full grip as much as you possibly can to stretch all that out and get really good at it. And it'll actually help you with your sport, okay? It'll loosen up your forearms, loosen up the muscles around your shoulder and your back and everything else, and make you just a better, more mobile athlete in general, okay? So work on that full grip on the front squats, make it look as pretty as possible, and then we can develop from there. So our last exercise in our squat progression is going to be a back squat. Back squats and front squats are primarily what you're gonna use over the course of your athletic career to get stronger and improve your sports performance. So these are the last 2 exercises really that you will need as far as the squat movement pattern is concerned, right? The back squat in particular, when you put it on your back like this, you're able to actually load much more weight on the bar than you can with a front squat or any other type of squat, right? So usually that's the one you'll see people move the most weight with. And that's the one that's probably gonna get you the strongest because you can add the most weight, okay? Now, just because it's an easier position technically than the front squat doesn't mean you should treat it like it's an easier exercise. Back squat should be hard, okay? You should be loading it accordingly. So the way you get under a back squat, basically we're gonna take that same thumb's distance grip from the smooth part of the bar right here, just like we did with our front squat, same thing, okay? But now instead of going on our front, I'm actually gonna duck my head underneath and put my back, my upper back, right up against the bar, okay? Now, the spot that you wanna put the bar is actually a little bit lower than this bump in your neck right here. It should be right here on your upper traps, these big muscles right here in the base of your neck, okay? That's where the bar wants to sit. You're basically putting it on that muscle there, okay? And that's gonna give you some padding so it doesn't hurt. If the bar hurts when you're putting it on your back, you probably have it in the wrong spot, okay? At no point in time, ever, should you ever put a pad on the bar, okay? One, it's a little bit soft and a little funny, okay? Secondly, okay, it's just gonna put the bar further away from your center of mass because now the bar is thicker, okay? And it's gonna make your squat much, much harder over time, okay? So we wanna make sure we have full connection with the barbell, okay? And that bar is sitting right in the meat of our traps, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and get in that same setup position, get it right in the meat of my traps there, and then I'm gonna go ahead and stand it up to unrack it, okay? Step forward onto my heel ramps, and then from there, I'm thinking about squeezing my shoulder blades together and down, okay? Chest is out, and I'm bracing through my trunk, okay? As tight as I can. Now, when I say bracing, basically what you can think about is taking a big deep breath in and holding it, creating a big belly for yourself. So that's a brace, okay? Once you apply that brace, your spine is gonna be incredibly stable, okay? Don't think about sucking it in, okay, and holding your abs in as tight as you can. Think about taking a big deep breath of air and holding that air in, okay? Once I set my brace, now I can descend in my squat. Okay, so that's my back squat. Now what you might notice at the bottom of the back squat, you might be slightly more leaned forward, okay? That's simply just because the weight's sitting behind us. But that doesn't mean I want you to fully lean forward like a good morning squat, okay? You should still fight to stay as upright as you possibly can, all right? And that's gonna help protect your back, make sure that you're in good positions and you're using your legs as much as you possibly can, okay? So that's the back squat. That will be our final exercise in our squat progression. Load those up heavy, get strong, and we'll see you guys next time.